27 degrees.
Such a tease.
Yes. Well, it's weather like I've never felt. This, for instance, it's a sunny day. It can be 32 degrees outside, ready to be warm. Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. My name is Bill Wood. Excuse me? Is that better? Okay, now we can go ahead and get started. My name is Bill Woods, and I'm the Vice President of Sales for MediaMorph. I am standing in today for Shahid Khan, who is traveling in Europe and unable to join us today. Working with Shahid for a number of years with MediaMorph, where we help content licensors track content deals, manage the rights that you got available, and then track performance data against that as well to calculate royalties and license fees. I wanted to go ahead and just kind of start out with some interesting things that I think are happening in the industry. I mean, wow, talk about a couple of big changes that are happening in the TV everywhere and TV cross-platform world. First, we'll talk a little bit about Comcast. I mean, it's kind of the biggest news, I think, that's happened in the last week, where you have a huge MVPD under pressure, stalling growth. What do? Merge. So now they've gone through a very long process, $45 billion deal, looking at what's going to happen. Last week, we're all reading the newspaper about some regulatory hearings. End of the week, deal's off, they're walking away. So is that kind of reaching some sort of saturation at that point? Was it really about the broadband access, or is it going to get into some of the other content rights types of issues? Contrast that with Verizon, where they're selling off plant, right? They've now divested about maybe 20% of their market, their plant subscribers, while at the same time, coming out with custom FiOS, which is dramatically changing what they're offering, and getting now challenged with lawsuits from a lot of the people they're licensing content from. So those are two kind of interesting things. But third, where are they going with the whole virtual MVPD? They've invested heavily in Edgecast and OnQ and a lot of new technologies. So is there really divesting footprint? Is really they're looking for the whole world to be their potential video customer? So good news is we have a really good panel here to dive into these issues. So I'd like to go ahead and give each of the panelists a couple minutes to introduce themselves and talk about how they fit into this multi-screen video ecosystem. Let's go ahead and just start.
Okay. Very quickly, my name is Jason Henderson. I actually wear two hats. At Dish Network, I'm the senior contract manager for video entertainment and marketing, so I do new deals for apps, marketing partners, what have you. And I'm also a content creator. I write novels for HarperCollins and a few others. So I can come at it from both sides.
Hi, my name is Rich Goldberg. I have a North America releasing company called Vertical Entertainment. We do all platforms, theatrical, DVD, TV, SVOD, etc. Release about 20 films a year and hope to transfer some of the knowledge that I learned here today into my distribution company in the future.
Hi, everybody. I'm Curtnutson, known on TV as a cyber guy. I have a small boutique media brand called The Cyber Guy that's syndicated in local news and now airs as part of Fox News Channel and in part with NBC Universal. Cover technology, it's been my love. I've done it for 20 years, and this subject in particular I love because we're at that pinnacle moment, and everyone in this room is, I think, going to be very lucky about what they'll hear. The forecast is looking extremely bright in this horizon, as you all know, and I look forward to learning with you in this talented group with what kind of deals are happening right now, what the future looks like, and I think you'll get out of this a crystal ball that is pretty accurate of any fortune teller you've been to. So, but a lot of this is predicated about what's about to happen next, and I think you've got some people that are flanking me that actually know. So, that with it, thank you.
Hi, my name is Soumya, and I look after the consumer-facing businesses for BBC Worldwide, which is the commercial arm of the British Broadcasting Corporation out of London. So for North America, i.e. US and Canada, I look after everything from the digital transaction, the home entertainment business, which won't seem to go away, a small film business, live events, direct-to-consumer facing e-commerce. So I think that about covers that. And I think that, we, the BBC, have an interesting legacy in this market because from being told every other day, thank you for Downton Abbey.
Yeah. And thank you, by the way.
Thank you.
That was awesome, yeah.
We always take it generously. It has nothing to do with us, but thank you. We find that there is a very interesting balance on where the brand push phenomenon and the consumer pull phenomenon meet, and I think this is what we're hopefully going to talk about.
Yeah. So I'd like to first jump in and talk a little bit about this new wave of distribution, where it seems to be the expectation is we're always on, we're always connected, be it wireless or some form of broadband, but really the reinforcement of the connectedness. And whether that's on your smartphone, your network, or whatever device that we're looking at, just really what are some initial thoughts on how is this going to help evolve the TV business over time?
Can I throw something out
Sure.
about that? So at Dish, actually, for several years, we've been taking this extremely seriously. So we offer a suite of apps. The idea is to have the best possible TV Anywhere experience, where you're on your iPad or you're out of the office, you're traveling, you're whatever, you're always going to be able to, and you can today. You can access your DVR, you can watch whatever's there, you can watch your live TV. We've made sure that you get that experience. I could right now bring out my phone and start playing some James Bond movie that I have in my DVR. But the reason why that's really challenging is that for years, so many of the MVPDs have struggled because you're on your app and you find, oh, this piece of content I can't play unless I'm attached to my router somewhere. And this piece of content, is only available for a short time and it's disappeared off my service. So I think that we're doing a good job with that, but I think that it's been a constant struggle.
If I can jump in, I don't know that there's a seamless TV Anywhere solution today, and I don't know that there can.
I feel
be
good
a
about
seamless.
ours. I do, but no, go ahead.
No,
Go ahead.
I mean I think some of our research actually shows that despite the proliferation of devices and apps, consumption's still happening for long-form content anyway. It's happening on the big screen.
Yeah.
And there is a desire to continue to, perpetuate that activity, if you will. And I think that we have a challenge because we as content suppliers, distributors, whatever it is, have to find a way to make sure that we get to the consumers wherever they are, whatever app they're in, deal with the fact that the mobile broadband is not necessarily keeping up with the kinds of content we want to stream through that pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rich was saying earlier in our pre-discussion, really kind of a brilliant, and I'm sorry to steal it, but just a brilliant way of looking at sort of each end of this. Is like, when it comes down to extraordinary content that's produced by, professional media brands and publishers and distributors and producers, well, we know what that looks like. And then you have the absolute other end of that, which is the nanoseconds on YouTube and various other user gen bases for that. And we were talking about
PewDiePie.
Well, let's talk about, yeah, we were talking though, and I think it's substantial, is how much is somebody right now who's garnering the attention of an audience making on YouTube versus the top TV star in America?
So you were talking about PewDiePie,
Yeah.
who is a YouTube provider. Does anybody know who PewDiePie is?
No.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So, but I see roughly like 46, 50% of you do. And my 9-year-old is obsessed with PewDiePie. This is a...
Highest paid YouTube star.
So it's a person who plays video games and does basically, really, it's a radio show where they play video games, ultimately. And, but go ahead, yeah.
No, but I don't have the data in front of me, but we're talking about perhaps, and of course, YouTube doesn't allow for its content providers to release the terms of their agreements, so it's all speculation and people reverse engineer numbers out of it, but it was a figure around 3 million of take home of that one cut of that one person, and that's probably low, contrasted with the #1 TV star who is...
You know,
Anyone?
I don't want to steal your.
No, I don't. I'm not the
That
one
would
who
be
came up
Judge Judy. Judge
50
Judy.
million a year.
And to Soumya's point, people are watching Judge Judy on a giant screen in their living room.
Yeah, it really gets in also to the, the advertising values and what, in this case, it's syndicated daytime TV and what those brands are willing to pay for that ad spot versus maybe what they're going to pay for a programmatic ad jumped in on a YouTube view. So certainly one of the monetization is something we'll be digging into for sure, because I think that does matter. But between the various and emerging distribution models, whether it's over the top, could be direct applications, could be, the YouTube economy or what a Vivo has there, could be subscription over the top, what we see in a Netflix type of a model, could be ad supported over the top, like Sony's Crackle, or something in between, something that's subscription and ad supported, like what Hulu's doing. There's a lot, or heck, we talked about TV everywhere, open or authenticated TV everywhere from the MVPDs or the individual networks themselves. What do you think about that? Which one's going to win? Are there advantages or disadvantages to these different models? Some of you look like you're thinking.
I mean, like, if we're making guesses, we might as well guess. It's going to be Netflix. Netflix wins every war. Exactly, and Amazon right behind them. Look, I mean, I don't know. Look, I think it's easy enough for us to speculate about what it is. What I certainly hope is that, again, it comes back to the consumer. If the consumer is going to make a choice, and I hope the business follows.
But aren't you frustrated by the fact that if you want to watch Daredevil, you have to subscribe to Netflix. If you want to watch Game of Thrones, you have to subscribe to HBO. If you want to watch, Younger's not on Amazon. There's got to be there's several Amazon Prime shows, and you have to have that. So it's $99 to Amazon and $120 to Netflix and whatever, and
It adds up.
The
Yes.
reason why DVD is still alive, go to Walmart and pick any one of those out.
Right. And what you spend is time. You spend waiting, basically, before you buy the Blu-ray.
And Bill, what we do know is that the facts, you could take home, 57% of broadband U.S. consumers right now spend money on this kind of stuff. They spend money on OTT, over-the-top video services such as Netflix, Hulu Plus. I think that's kind of pretty dramatic growth over a very short period of time. The average U.S. broadband household spend, according to Parks Associate, which we like to quote, spends $9 per month on internet video, and that is up from $7 in 2012. And the number of hours that people are watching video content continues to rise. It now exceeds 36 hours per week, and that was as of Q4 in 2014. And internet video accounting for 36% of that time, or about 3.4 hours a week. Those are pretty substantial numbers to sink your teeth into.
So it's additive then.
Well,
they all win.
is it additive or is it not?
We have
Is
Netflix
it-
and we have, 'cause
Yeah,
it's
but
growing.
are you watching free content? So that's the actual addition to what was traditionally seen, or is it monetized? And that's the real rub. And I know from my vantage point, as a distributor, the ability to transact is becoming more difficult. The subscription models, the over-the-top, Sling TV, whichever method it is that gives you, I think, a great value proposition in the home, has taken away from a margin of transactional business where studios and independents have relied for years. Now, it's best for the consumer, so all of us distributors are going to have to figure out a model that does work. But today, that's the biggest shift in the business, in my opinion. The ability to try and figure out what your margin can be, because Netflix, who's taken over the world, pays you a flat amount of money. You have to be able to run a model for either producing content or acquiring content to be able to understand that there isn't additional transactional value in that title. It becomes a Netflix catalog title at best. And that's a whole different layer of what I think is an interesting stat, that people are spending more time viewing, but what are they viewing? And especially if you look at a couple generations, younger than we are. Then it's particularly acute that they do not want to spend money to occupy video time, to viewing time.
What do you mean by that last part? That they don't want to spend money to occupy video time?
My kids, as we mentioned earlier, will spend a long amount of time on YouTube.
Yep.
And they're much less interested. They don't mind spending my money, but God forbid they had to spend their own.
Yeah.
They
Don't
would
use my
really,
iTunes card.
really find enough to occupy them for an hour watching YouTube, as opposed to traditionally what we did as kids is at least watch something with advertising that had a model associated with monetization. It's very difficult.
Although so I have a 13 and a 9-year-old, and so yeah, they do watch a lot of the YouTube videos, but they're still also obsessed with a lot of scripted content. No, it's scripted hasn't died yet for them, because My Little Pony is doing gangbusters, Teen Titans Go does really well, you know, all those Disney sitcoms, you know, and it's not just them. I mean, all of their friends are, so there's still a place for the scripted content.
A couple years later, mine are turning 15 and 14,
Yeah.
maybe just a touch above, they're a lot less interested in long form.
Interesting.
They can spend the same amount of time, but seeing 15 different segments as opposed to one long stretch.
Yeah, yeah.
So while we're talking a little bit about the YouTube economy and what's happening there, what about some of the MCNs? I mean, between Vivo and Maker, you know, have done pretty well, you know, a pretty good exit on some of those, or these Vivos certainly driving enormous amounts of traffic and on YouTube and starting to now increasingly do more campaigns off. You know, there are tremendous businesses out there leveraging the YouTube economy. You know, is there room for other players to do the same thing? You know, if that's where they're at. And, you know, what about Google's original programming and what they're doing? And Facebook, you going to see any of these types of partners emerge as well?
You know, again, this is easy, right? This is the go-go day of content, if you will, and even distribution and proliferation of distribution. So I think everyone's going to take a crack at it. But I think the reality is, the middle is getting squeezed, i.e. the true niches will survive and the true brands will survive, which then means everyone has to find a way to go to one of those ends. And I bring that up because, yes, we hear about Vivo and we hear about Maker, but the facts are the monetization models are just not well-founded. The math is actually quite sad when you think about what the affiliate revenues in the US is versus the entire YouTube ad model. So then and then if you said, okay, here's all of these impressions, if you will, and here's the dollar amount.
Yeah.
So what's each person getting? The affiliate model and the ad sales model in the linear world, like far deluges that.
And where do you think the money's going?
In the YouTube world?
In all of that, in the whole cycle? And
Everyone up the chain. I mean, there's commissions
so piece
cuts.
by piece by piece by piece.
Yes.
So, and when you say they're squeezing the middle, or was that what you said? Who's in the middle that's getting?
I was
pushed
actually
out?
in that middle. I was referring to content. I actually think that there is a pattern emerging, to Rich's point, where there was a time when the consumer could transact and choose to transact in that middle.
Yeah.
But because that middle today relies upon a Netflix to get made, it may not get made.
Is your fear that we'll always have somebody spending a lot of money on a new season of Sherlock, to make a new season of Sherlock, but that smaller, at least certainly scripted work is just going to dry up, that people aren't
Yes.
going to make it anymore
Yes.
because there aren't good, you know.
Yes,
Sounds
I'm
like
saying that the
movies
niches,
also.
the smaller, like the very true small niche programming, i.e. a documentary about, I don't know, sharks and the Great Barrier Reef. I don't think it
Right.
exists, but something like that will survive.
Right.
And
But
And
Downton Abbey.
Yeah.
that's it.
That's what you described as the niche, right? And you said something about making movies.
Well, I thought you were speaking about sort of the middle where you're not branded.
That's
You know,
correct.
BBC will last, obviously,
That's right.
the length of time, whereas vertical entertainment isn't known as a consumer brand.
Sure.
And therefore is in the middle and scrambling to try to transact
That's right.
in this new structure or model. And
That
it's
is
becoming more
absolutely correct.
difficult.
Who's getting rich? Is it, if content's being squeezed out and the pie's being cut, is transport taking home the lion's share now? Is it if it was sitting with the MSOs for delivery to your house via cable or with like AT&T Uverse, is it now, is the game really going to be shaped by those who are transporting it? Whether it's, you know, the Netflix of the world, Amazons, or or like Verizon's own startup in that arena, the virtual MSOs that they're going after? Where do we think that
A bunch of us are going
money-
next week to Chicago. It's not the cable show anymore. It's now the INTX, Internet and Telephone Exchange, right?
It's interesting. So, shape from that.
You know, if history repeats itself, last year, there was an admonishment from the FCC chairman about net neutrality. You know, don't you do it, don't slow down Netflix. And then there was a lot of talk about, you know, cost of content gets too out of control, screw it, we'll just sell broadband. We saw that happen this year where Suddenlink pulled back on Viacom. Next thing you know, poor county supervisor in North Carolina's got SpongeBob at the county meeting, you know, admonishing them for, you know, how dare you take SpongeBob away from these people? And then there was different sides of the truth as far as how many subscribers they lost versus we really didn't lose any. We might have lost some to Dish or some other direct to home, but hey, they buy internet from me. So I don't know that the transport is going to do that. I think that right now it is certainly a seller's market for some of the content, you know, because there's more vehicles with that. I think maybe let's look at the other side of that. So what is the effect of this on cable VOD we see today? You know, we see, you know, I don't know, my house, you watch a lot of YouTube, but we rent a lot of movies. We watch a lot of movies. I think vertical, I think that's your business. What do you see happening in the cable VOD world and EST? And is it different than it was a couple years ago?
It is. There's, I think, more focus from the cable companies to start with. I don't know if you guys agree, especially, you know, your business. I think in the past, especially more so cable than satellite, was focused on trying to get you to buy a higher tier of programming. More than saying that part of our consumer experience is this transactional experience where we need the right movies presented in the right way and we can monetize those and everybody can share the profits. I find cable to be more focused. I find them to be more nimble. Part of it is competition. We can use the Netflix word again because they certainly have scared the majority of these traditional, somewhat antiquated companies into being consumer focused for a change.
Yeah.
I find there is more business year over year transacting on cable, telco, satellite. I find it to be the haves and the have-nots, though, and somewhat ties into what Sumya was talking about a second ago with if you have brands or if you have box office, you can drive more out of transactional cable than you ever could before. But when you have a smaller movie that needs love, that doesn't scream to be promoted, it's becoming more and more difficult.
Yeah.
And again, it's not dissimilar to the theatrical business where it's very hard to launch a platform release that could be the best movie in the world, but it doesn't have the, you know, the star power for somebody to invest that kind of money because to compete with the event films out there. And to me, the analogy plays on almost all of these platforms. You have movies that these big companies are willing to promote and think they can drive the most business out of, and a bit of the independent, and I'm not breaking out a violin here, but it's very hard to launch a smaller movie and let it play over time and build an audience. And
Absolutely.
I think it's really prevalent today, and I'm not sure when and if that tide will change.
Does windowing factor into that? I mean, last year, bouncing back between YouTube and the cable VOD world, but last year we were all wondering what Vessel was going to be. Is it, you know? Now they've signed some people. Is it going to work? Is that windowing? That's at the other end of the YouTube world. That's, you know, taking some stars and having a premium window effectively. And you're saying sometimes that, unless I don't get it, but I think that we're seeing a lot of the larger content licensors certainly pay premiums for windows. Versus how do you get your story told and get that right placement?
But this answers Kurt's question, right? Who's making money? I mean, the content guys, they're making money because there's so many other people who think there's proliferation of distribution, so I can get into it.
But it's scary. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, no, it is. Look, I was looking at the numbers for TVOD, which is the transactional cable VOD that Rich was just referring to, and there's a scary phenomenon. For the first time in, I want to say about 5 years, Q1 transactional VOD is down for theatrical new releases and catalog. I mean, in the TV space that never existed, but the transactional rental business is down, whereas EST, which is the sell-through business, is actually up, which is which befuddles me, because simply because I think what Netflix has created is a rental economy. What Netflix has said is, hey, you can watch this
Yeah.
when you want. You've paid me my rental fee, and you can watch me when you want. Which, so you would think that there would be an acceptance of this rental economy.
What I was referring to as scary, and maybe that's not the appropriate word, but if you're like if it was 1955, and I wanted to make a low budget legal thriller, maybe I got like a B-level star or a big star, but I gave her a small part or whatever, and so I put together a thriller. The way it would get seen by people is it would be the second bill attached to an expensive movie. So somebody would buy their ticket, the money gets split in some way or another, and you go watch the big movie with John Wayne, and then you see the smaller movie with Joan Crawford afterwards. And that was how movies were distributed. You'd have the B movie would be a second bill. And that doesn't really exist anymore, you know? And so if I go out and I make a low budget movie today, figuring out how to get people, you know, to watch it when I'm dealing with Avengers ads, like literally every 30 seconds, you know, is a very, very frightening
You can get
prospect.
people to watch it, they're just not going to pay you to watch it.
Right.
Right.
They-
Right.
Right. No, I guess that's true.
Well, some stats in this area. Half of those who have pay TV subscriptions now via an MSO or cable, however they get it at home, say that they'll cancel their pay TV subscriptions once they can get the one that they want packaged elsewhere in a, you know, a la carte kind of fashion. And this is a study that was surrounded about HBO's launch of their own web-only exclusive content, where I can now just go straight to HBO and buy their content without having to subscribe to, I mean, personally, we get DirecTV.
Yeah.
I like HBO. I also like DirecTV, but now all of a sudden in my brain is I don't have to get DirecTV if I want HBO. They're estimating that 6.8 subscribers that are currently buying HBO through normal subscription services are going to evaporate. They're just going to disconnect if these statistics are true. They're saying that they surveyed 10,000 broadband users, finding that 17% of homes with high-speed internet say that they'll subscribe to HBO's web subscription service when it launches, and that there are currently at least 88 million households with broadband in the U.S., so that's a pool of 15 million subscribers, and that 91% of those are going to subscribe to the web-only thing if they want pay TV, rather than get it through their system. I think that's a high statistic. I think you also have to caution yourself on surveys and when people do phone calls, because what time of day was it? Yeah, say one thing to another is exactly right. People will often say what, especially in this particular arena, having covered technology year after year, moment after moment, pinnacle shift in consumer behavior after another, these are all to be taken with a grain of salt, but to just keep your eye on it, because there is some validity to the fact that there will be some shift to that area, but it doesn't mean that DirecTV has to worry about me unplugging. Where DirecTV has to worry about is in regard to, I think I represent a consumer angle that's not foreign. I love the ability, and have paid extra, to have the ability to get what used to be called Genie Go, and I think they abandoned the name, but it's still on my iPad as an app, where I can access the recorded content from home that we pay for.
Extra for that?
I did for the
You
hardware.
should come over to Dish.
There we go. So the biggest frustration that makes me have one of those consumer fits that we're finding is driving a lot of consumer sentiment in the future when you talk about programming for other screens besides the one at home that's hanging on the wall, is it needs to be a lot less glitchy. And my experience is I commute between LA and New York, and I have seen every movie on the plane at this point. And I enjoy being able to take the content from home and watch it. The biggest problem is it requires re-authentication constantly. And so all of a sudden, I find myself at the beginning of a flight where the in-flight entertainment is not only not working, but there's also there's no internet, there's nothing. And I'm like, all right, how am I going to spend the next 5.5 hours? So, oh, that's no problem. I'll flick on my DirecTV Genie Go product, and I've got all my stuff at home. Well, guess what? Big zero. said, we cannot identify your access from home at this time. Sorry, can't get to any of the content you paid for that's right there, but we're not going to let you have it. And one thing that has come out in any of these studies that we look at is that consumers are no longer willing to tolerate in the arena of OTT or anything. They're not willing to tolerate any sort of subpar viewing experience that we may have seen, say, in 2014. We started to see that the starts of videos were improving, quality was improving. And for 2015 and beyond, this being a very important year, the user at this point is considered more of a super fan of the content, someone who's chasing after the content, but they're unwilling to deal with the kind of glitches that I deal with that's on the airplane on a constant basis. And frankly, it's that, we've all been there. It's like, I'm canceling, I have to spend all this money and I can't get it. So consumers are becoming more sophisticated to that notion and demanding more, and they're more impatient. And they want the viewing experience to be superior every time, and they will actually punish companies when they offer a subpar experience by abandoning the content altogether and canceling service, as I have thought of several times.
Let's shift the conversation a little bit then toward, consumers and value prop, measurement. I mean, how are consumers relating to the varied methods? There's different things out there, and what we talked about a number of the options, and then, what are they seeking? How are they going to discover content? You talked about it from if it didn't have a theatrical release, how does Odd Thomas get, the VOD that it should, versus if we're unbundled and we're looking for a over the top. Can't talk about that without subscribers, be they subscribers from CBS to their distributors, or you subscribe to CBS directly, or the others. So what are some of the thoughts on that from a consumer perspective?
Can I just give this one little story?
Sure.
Which related to this. So my mom, we got her Netflix. For 2 years she had it. Not one time did she order a DVD, and not one time did she use a streaming service. Not that she didn't know how, but it just didn't occur to her. It just didn't occur to her that she really wanted to rent a movie. And if she did, how would it really get there? And isn't somebody going to steal it out of the mailbox? It was like one of these things that just kept her from getting there. And all of a sudden, Orange is the New Black comes up in discussion at home and with her friends. And they've all seen it and she hasn't. And suddenly this foreign instrument that was impossible to turn on, and Kurt, can you just show me again? And all of a sudden, she turned that thing on and could watch Orange is the New Black better than she could turn on the light in the bathroom. I mean, it's interesting because it's a very telling story about where a consumer is that in this particular case, extraordinary desire for content was the draw to overcome what seemed like an utterly impossible idea of how to watch something, which you and I might think, it's not real tough to watch streamed content from Netflix, but for her, it just wasn't real until being so compelled socially. Yeah. So what is it then? She now gets to participate in the conversation with her friends. She now gets to feel like she's more part of life.
It's the must-see argument, must-see TV argument without it being tied to a schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I just think that's a compelling thing to keep your eye on and see what actually, we all sit here saying, oh, what's going to be the next big vessel? Watch for those little things that happen. Watch for the star content that comes through that. Watch to see if the BBC comes out with another Downton Abbey, and then may choose to force us to watch it a certain way where all of a sudden like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. And then now you have a chunk of 20% of the global media market through that one thing, and then that's the new thing. And that's the new, as iTunes was, or first Napster for music, it becomes the next thing. The other thing to keep our eye on is long before the great Steve Jobs left this planet, I had really the privileged time to get a minuscule few moments with a guy and his team. And I have been at every one of their launches, and I got to see what was coming next at some point. And I'll go ahead and tell you, because it's Tim Cook, their current CEO, has alluded to, he just wants somehow to create something that keeps us from meeting in this room, to figure out how to get content and through what vessel into somebody else's possession. and he thinks that they're onto something. I don't know what it is. I don't know if they are onto it yet. But if you look at who can create something that is from the ground up, a new, completely never thought of means to get content where you want, when you want, how you want, they might be the ones to keep an eye on. And then, of course, all the other players that follow that.
Gosh, can I disagree with that?
You can.
I
A lot of
thought you
people
were
do.
gonna-
Would you
No,
please?
wait.
I mean, honestly, I think what Apple has done for us is created a beautiful. I will speak into the microphone. I think what Apple has done really well for us is created a beautiful interface. I don't know that they have been the best strategists, and I think we are in a scary world of business because, to your point, I think the consumer's choosing when, where, how, what, which means the studios have lost control. I mean, I think that the consumers have, in some ways, spoken loudly. If I'm going to choose YouTube, I'm going to choose what I do on Netflix. Whereas in the olden days, the studios could dictate to you, this is the movie, you're going to watch it in that theater for 4 weeks because I'll make sure the theater player doesn't play anything else.
But I think what Apple might be able to do that we haven't seen anybody else do is create an ecosystem that means, and this is all hypothetical, but it's just based on what train tracks I've seen them on before. We all fall sucker in buying the Apple Watch. I'm not the sucker yet, by the way. But we get home and our phone or our device or our mechanism that is in our head that's a chip or whatever it is that electronic deal that connects us to the rest of the world, and you know we're all inevitably going to possess. We already do in the form of a phone, now a watch. I think a reality will exist in the future where you will walk into certain aspects, just like the Nest thermostat does, predicting your own pattern, predicting in a more authentic way what you desire to watch, when you like to watch it. And you walk into a room and suddenly not the TV, but the wallpaper turns on, and I don't think that's too far-fetched nor too far off. So I think where Apple might nail it is in the aspect of simply bringing you what you want where you want it, where I don't think anyone has done that yet.
But for the next couple of years, I'm sorry? Well, I mean, yeah, for the
What is the value proposition of content? I was gonna make $1,000 off my content. Where is it gonna come from? I mean, I'm sort of lost. This is about the value proposition.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about where's the money. You know, what are the models that are gonna win, and what differentiates the winners from the losers?
And you already have it, so I've got my stuff on everything.
Yep.
Where's the money coming from?
Depends on the content.
Well, I
I'm
mean,
sorry. I mean, I think
Content is distributed everywhere.
even if
Right.
it's, I would still say the answer is depends on the content, because again, you'll find that if you're a big hit movie, people want to buy it, people want to own it. If it's something that's casual viewing, you're going to find that the money's going to come from Netflix. If it's an engaging, what I'm going to call engaging, kind of niche product.
I'm a consumer and I bottomed up.
right.
And I told you I like cutie pie as well as I like Kevin Spacey, and I don't really care. I'm just gonna watch what I watch, and I'm gonna watch what I want. Which is what you said, you know.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
So, where am I? Money's gonna come somewhere. It's gonna come from the advertisers. It's gonna come from.
The subscriber.
Well,
I think-
like Dish has decided, for instance, that we have gone ahead to embrace like Netflix, truly. So we still charge a subscription. So money's coming in that way, right? And we're selling ESTs, so that's transactional. And we do rentals and we do that stuff, and we'll sell premiums and we sell HBO. But now we actually sell Netflix. So, you know, because we realize that some people prefer to get the content in that way, but that's a, you know, and it's a different model. And people said, well, you know, that's going to cannibalize the electronic sell-through. But strategically, we just decided that it probably won't. The people are going to choose different methods of consumption.
Or
yes.
the other side of that coin is Rich or Somya may elect to license to a Netflix, which is a subscription.
Yeah.
Or you may elect to license to Sony Crackle, which is ad-supported.
Or Amazon
You may
Prime,
be
which will-
obligated,
yeah.
depending on where you go, to put it on Hulu. depending on some of your other distribution agreements.
And as he
What are
was
some
saying,
thoughts?
probably all of them.
Yeah, of course. I was just trying to go back to the business
Yeah.
aspect.
And I think the only thing that wasn't mentioned was the windowing.
Yeah.
So ultimately, your product determines where the strength in the marketplace will be predictable, or where you'll, find your value proposition. But the windowing of the product is the guarantee that throughout, at least today, the layers and platforms, there is still a model that you can monetize. I felt like what you guys were just speaking of, the biggest conundrum today is that there are so many different ways to consume, and none of them satisfy me as a consumer to see it anywhere I want, any way I want. Everything has some hurdle to it, whether it's putting my credit card in and signing up for the website, whether it's because I'm out of Wi-Fi range. There's ultimately, this is the disarray today that presents opportunities, but also can confuse and frustrate the consumer. And that's a fairly tenuous tipping point, I feel like we are this year. It's really going to have to become a little more stabilized, and the consumer can't get frustrated, else they'll just not consume as much.
And I think there are lost leaders. I think in terms of producers, I'm sure BBC would speak to it, that when you're trying to engage your audience as a producer and pick the right methodology to transport that content, you're rolling the dice. You're putting it out there. You don't know what's coming back. And at this point in time, you're just going to have to bite it, honestly, and not expect a value proposition to come back around and see a massive return unless you do have a giant hit. And how frequent is that? You can't live in that zone of, I'm going to come up with the Kevin Spacey cut-through content that's now going to put a new service on the map and shift tens of millions of people. What we know is that, for example, right now when it comes to OTT, at best, anybody would be able to attract, say, 1 million people to what we know to be the most significantly attractive video content, sporting events. So 1 million people doesn't come close to cutting into what it would cost you to negotiate with the NFL. You would need to have a minimum of about 10 million people that you know are watching in order for you to just break even on what in 2021, I think, NFL licensing rights are due for renewal. You know that there at this point will be this, we won't be having this conversation. We'll have some more clearly defined winners, and we'll have some more clearly defined ideas of where the revenue is going and how that path into the revenue is there for you. But right now, nobody is going to go spend unless they're just willing to take a massive loss, and I don't know who can on, say, an NFL event that's that major. But I don't think you're going to see success in that arena of live events, which we know to be the leader in content.
Well, let's talk about that, because ultimately that comes down to measurement. So we know the long tail linear view, specifically sports, it's because they know that's where you're going to get the premium ad dollars. You watch the Super Bowl, what'd you see? Beer, car, potato chips. Oh yeah, cross promotion of network television shows, right? There's a lot of promo out there as well. Last week, Nielsen came out with a statement, a press release, saying that they are, I wrote it down here, industry rules bar them from including digital in TV ratings. Okay. Peel back the onion a little bit, and they were talking about Netflix and other OTT services stripping watermarks, so it's harder for them to measure. Same time, how are you going to get in some of these new platforms the right advertisement without the right monetization and measurement models? So what are some of your thoughts on that? I mean, there's got to be, I love the quote, Nielsen said, we're not going to trust a Franken-metric. You know, at the end of the day, the advertisers want to have a better view of total audience measurement. You know, we saw large networks moving away from the Nielsen currency. So what are your thoughts on measurement and monetization and how it ties into some of these opportunities we have with these new platforms?
I mean, as long as it's a measurement that all the parties can agree on. I mean, basically, if you're doing a deal with any kind of provider on either side, one of the big pieces is how are we going to measure the viewership of this piece of content, and they have to pick something, and they have to pick something that both sides trust. You know, whether it's Nielsen or I can't remember the metric that's used for music that Vivo uses, but and you know, Nielsen's right. I mean, everybody's afraid of so-called. Now, they're in the business of making you afraid of any other measurement, but nevertheless, that is a great fear, you know, because all you're going to be able to do is report on how many people watch this, and that's how you're going to put together.
We're lucky enough to have somebody in the audience that might have an opinion. Oh, okay, go ahead.
One thing that I just wanted to throw in, if you don't mind, you read something interesting where they asked people, hey, are you going to give up your cable in the next year? Are you going to dump Time Warner, dump Comcast, dump Dish? And the thing, so we think about this all the time, but one thing I notice is that we keep reinventing industries. In other words, you know, because this happened in books. So like, I might be, I'm a consumer, and I say, you know, I want Game of Thrones, and that's all I want. So I'm gonna get HBO Go and CSI, actually CSI too. So HBO Go and CBS, I'll have those. Well, now I'm pregnant, so I'm going to have Disney, CBS, and HBO Go, and that's it for years. And after a while, you've actually built up a package for yourself. Maybe you're happy with this because you chose it yourself, but it's literally as expensive as the cable company that you dropped.
That will be the debate next week in Chicago.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's going to happen.
Yes.
I think this is.
Oh, and then you're going to discover cable companies and go, oh my gosh, these guys say they'll bundle a bunch of stuff together and I can pay them money. And that will seem novel.
Laura, did you have a question, Laura?
Seen that got widened. Tell me what happens to the money. I'm really curious as to what you guys think the money flows are if it can't follow consumers to smartphones.
I think the fix is learning how to follow them
Yeah.
and unleashing that. I'm not aware of how problematic that continues to be. I don't measure it, but I can tell you this, that the advertisers we deal with will give us money when we can prove that we're actually providing them value. And if I can't prove that because the smartphone video isn't delivering me back a matrix that's trustable, well then I'm going to just scream and holler and do whatever it takes and get out my toolbox until I can. Because the value of that advertiser today is far greater than whatever that fix is going to cost me. And if it hasn't been invented, believe me, it will be.
I mean, I'll agree with him. While you can't track the IP, you can actually follow the login patterns.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's something that we're seeing in terms of how that will get monetized. Not as effectively. There's a second metric, and we talked about this in another panel yesterday, and I think this is very important as a social metric. We're finding that the engagement factor is also a huge impact on monetization. So it's just not the eyeballs, it's how effective those eyeballs are. And how you can, how you can prove that.
Okay.
You can tell who's got, I mean, you know, that's what, I think, you can tell how many streams have been played on a particular, on a particular piece of content out there in the universe, you know, and so I think we'll solve that.
I think the other one is last week, Facebook's numbers on mobile were, you know, up and to the right, significantly, right? So I would think maybe it's going to come to us in a different and unexpected way. Maybe it will be through some sort of authenticated place where it is, and they could be driving a more accurate metric. I don't know. It's just.
But yeah, I don't think measurement's going to be a tough path. It may just be that you don't see it at this moment, but.
There's dollars that will come.
Yeah.
Right. You build it, they will come. If there's dollars,
The other
you're
one,
gonna have it.
the other one I watch always is the upfronts versus the new fronts for me, because it just seems the upfronts has always historically been, you know, the big network opportunity with the big brands, and you it's a lot of the people that have and understand and know that currency and what they've done in the sampling. So I think when you start getting into having true transactional data that you can then tie to some of the sample data, that's where maybe some new and interesting insights can be driven. I hope. I hope so. So we talked a little about OTT, and obviously I started by talking about Comcast and Verizon. What are some of your thoughts on the emerging virtual MSO? We've seen certainly Dish with Sling was certainly one of the first out in the market and really providing something that was new and unique. And now Sony View has launched and is certainly out garnering a lot of attention and signing the right deals. And what Verizon has acquired from OnQ, Sony View did. They were able to sign the network deals. They were able to, kind of potentially break ranks with some of the companies in the bundle. What are some thoughts from the panel on that?
Gosh, I think that's an easy one. I think we answered it before where we said the virtual MSO is going to become the MSO of tomorrow.
Yes.
And I think that there's reaggregation is an inevitability. I mean, I know I'm using cliches here, but I think that everyone's going to go for the skinny bundle. Sounds like the right choice today. But after I've kind of aggregated all my skinny bundles, I should have gone with the regular bundle.
Right. Well, and it'll be helpful if there's actually a path for you to do that.
Right.
So that you can just sort of grow as your family grows. The content that will be available will grow.
But what happened this week when Verizon started to insinuate the skinny bundle? What happened?
That's it.
ESPN doesn't seem particularly happy with that. I mean, where do you think those lines are going to be?
Just how giant companies talk to one another. They'll work it out.
We can take.
So just in listening to this and where I listened to yesterday, I have a full bundle package BIOS. I live in Malvern Hills. I can't get any of these other cables properly to get all the content I want. And I also have Apple TV, which has all that stuff. I just got Netflix. Never had that before. Because everything I wanted was on my $212 a month cable bill.
Yeah.
Actually, which is now FiOS. Now, the interesting thing I'm trying to understand is to be able to provide content to people when they want it, where they want it, and how they want it. It seems like Netflix kind of tries to capture that market. Wouldn't it make sense for the individual cable companies and people like Verizon and Dish and Comcast and all those people? Can't they do something like that within your own? Like you said, you're providing Netflix.
We have a Netflix app. Yeah, we just decided.
Do your own non-Netflix, kind of like what you were just saying. And
Comcast.
That's TV everywhere.
Correct.
Yeah, you're talking about TV everywhere, and yes, it can be done.
It's actually being offered presently. So Comcast has I'll call it for a better word, a library service, which is essentially it's essentially what Netflix is.
And Dish as well. I don't remember what FiOS is doing as far as TV everywhere, but I know that they're after it. But I mean, Dish, I have my iPad. It has an app on it. It basically just gives me everything that I have on my DVR, so I can watch stuff.
Well, but the notion,
I don't know
the notion of the virtual everywhere, the notion of the virtual MVPD or MSO that I was trying to get at is more
like Sling TV,
right? Where you're going to get live news and some sports, be it whatever derivative. It's not going to be ESPN. It's going to be Fox Sports. There's going to be all the different emerging sports networks that are out there now, in some sort of form of a not direct to home like a satellite.
Yeah.
But literally just through your internet connection. So you would have a much smaller bill potentially because you'd only be getting your broadband from FiOS, but then you would have the ability to select whatever package it is that would still have a live TV component.
So Sling TV
and what's that going to happen to the Comcast? Are they going to want to suddenly, now they're not in the land grab for grabbing Time Warner, are they suddenly going to come up with their own? Verizon certainly has aspirations to do it. Dish has done it. Sony View through PlayStation, certainly not new to the entertainment world, but this is transformative. It's really a seminal moment, I think, in the pay TV industry.
And I think you're like me. You sit there and you see that bill and you're like, wait a minute. What am I really? Am I feeling the thrill I wanted out of spending all this on entertainment? And the answer is it's constantly this give and take thing. And I always feel like I'm spending a lot and I'm just right there just getting enough to where I don't cancel it. But then I find, like a lot of consumers, and what we're finding is that with the advent of a smartphone and with tablet devices that are mobile, people will spend incrementally through that pay service or through the telco and through, one-off, like, I don't do it so much on iTunes, but I will spend far more than I am ever aware of incrementally on just little add-on content through my own device. Right. And not even realizing that the whole time I was paying for it on that $221 bill already. So then it comes down to, you'll see an industry that consolidates in a way that delivers what none of us can tell you what it's going to be, but that it makes more sense and is more aligned with what we want and less what they want us to have. And I think we're caught in a transformative time where we're at the final stretch of you're getting what we want you to have, not what you want path. And we're at that precipice that's going to force, in the very essence of this subject right here, is the reason it will shift back to what you want.
Can I pull a question? I want to ask everybody and ask you guys, if you have something you want to watch, Iron Man, okay, how do you figure out where to find it? I mean, I know that there are like search services or...
We tried to touch on Discovery earlier, yeah.
Or do you...
Down that, yeah.
I mean, do you have a favorite app, or do you go to every single service and look it up on each one? I mean, what do you do? Which one?
There is a website made by Wikipedia.
Which one is that called?
Where to watch it.
Where, you mean, you said where to watch it?
I know you may not be able to hear this gentleman in the front row. What he's saying is that he goes to a website that's put together by the Motion Picture Association of America, and it's called what?
Where to
watch it.
Where to watch it?
Grace Note, there's Grace Note
Yeah,
now.
there's
It's
Grace
certainly
Note.
The Tribune.
Web.
There's also-
rebranded. They're
Right.
certainly doing a tremendous amount around Discovery as well.
There's Fan, there's,
Verizon, so you can watch all those movies, and you just type in whatever one you want, and sometimes it's free because it's already been shown.
Right.
So it'll be like a free and premium, so you like, you have to do a lot of scrolling and play around, but it says subcategory.
but it won't tell you if, let's say you look up A Star is Born, and Verizon doesn't have it. It would be nice if they could tell you, well, you know what, though you can get it from Amazon, or you can get it from Netflix, or
Well,
you can get it
the
from...
whole advent of Google TV a number of years ago was meant to do that.
Version 1.
Yes.
Yeah, and it just...
That's right.
Again, it's just too complicated. I remember seeing it and I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I have to have one of these. And I got it. And
I hope the bloggers quote that.
Right, I ended up with a Sony TV that had this built in, and I thought, this is the greatest thing ever, and it was beautiful, and it worked, and I gave it to my mom. When we got a new TV, the Mom, you're going to love it, we'll just put it in the guest room. And she's like, how do you turn it on? It's right there. So that, again, it came down to, for her, which was a lot of consumers, the remote control that was necessary simply to power Google TV was the deal killer right there. It was just far too complicated. So functionality, again, we're heading in a direction where somebody's got to come through with a breakthrough transport system that makes us not think about all this crap.
Which takes you back to Apple.
Do you think this will be the Apple wallpaper?
I don't know. No, I don't. I think it's going to be all these different deliveries, services that someone needs to aggregate in a very intelligent way where all of us are absolute suckers and fans of it.
So we're at about 15 minutes. I want to ask one more question to the panel, then I'd like to open it up for some audience Q&A. So with all of this, from a TV perspective, what's the role of the network, and who really is now going to be responsible for driving that brand with the consumer? Because traditionally it's been the network that's really been driving a lot of that. What do you see that changing? How's that going to go? Because that will drive discoverability as far as what shows you're getting behind and how you're promoting.
You mean the broadcast networks? What's the role of the broadcast network?
Yeah, who's going to drive the brand as far as the show brand? Is the network still responsible for that, or does the show individually start to more promote
Are you saying, like,
themselves?
so if BBC comes out with programming and now they want to move it into a variety of other delivery mechanisms, how do they promote it in that? Do they
maybe
use their
just to
own
get them to
vehicle?
watch
I
it.
mean, I still think that the broadcast network has to get behind the shows that it fosters, if you will. I mean, I think it's CBS cannot not take responsibility for Big Bang Theory. I mean, responsibility is a big word. But I think that at the end of the day, every one of these guys has to associate themselves with brands that are monetizable, because that is also their revenue. I don't know that it's necessarily the show brand. Game of Thrones and HBO have an umbilical cord.
Yeah.
CBS and whatever shows they're going to promote.
Well,
for
you mentioned Big
tomorrow.
Bang Theory, and that's a
Big Bang
CBS
Theory.
show. You know, and they'll guard it with their lives, I'm
Right.
sure.
And I think every one of them, I mean, except Netflix, the number of shows that, you power your Netflix today, and I want to say a good 20% of my screen today has a Netflix button on it. I mean, I happen to know for a fact that at least half of them are not Netflix. They just happen to acquire it for somebody and stamp
Yeah.
the Netflix original
Exclusive,
on
yeah.
it, or the Netflix exclusive. But I think that is, every one of them is going to try to own that content. This goes back to something that we didn't talk about. Content is king. I think content is what is going to power all of this. We can talk about pipe, we can talk about distribution, we can talk about delivery mechanisms, but I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to content, which then means that whoever owns that content better make sure that they're associating themselves with that content.
Well, and they're the ones who are the most responsible for promoting it. If I'm producing a show and it's coming out this Friday, any new program like The Messenger's just started or whatever, the network has many shows.
Right.
If my show fails, there's still all these other shows. They're not going to sync, but I'm going to sync. So I, as the guy who owns that, I don't own that. But I mean, if I were the one who owns that content, I'm the one who has to worry, hey, are we getting out there with our social networking? Are we doing whatever events? And I may even be the one who has to pony up the money for that stuff, because I'm the one who
This is different than-
really sinks if it sinks.
You probably have an opinion on that, Kurt.
I can tell you this, is that when you have a powerhouse brand and an existing channel to viewers out there in distribution, for example, on the news side, if I come up with a nugget of content on TV for tomorrow, and I want to push the viewer to explore that same content in other realms to try to get traction on a new delivery mechanism, or, whatever, I'm just being hypothetical, that I think it's called Fox Go or whatever that they've come up with at 21st Century Fox, but it's amazing the power when you go on TV and you say in news format, go here. And you don't even need to justify it. Not just go here for free, but just go here. The power of that is far greater than any group of advertisements that could have been purchased to promote the service. It's just compelling that still in this time frame, we can get, generally speaking, it's the older part of the audience, the more affluent part of the audience that is willing to listen and without any sort of guidance, just go do. And they will. They are the ones who convert and go and to the message you're trying to push them to. Your kids, on the other hand, weren't watching me, don't care, and knew about that, 9 days before you did, at least. And they're the ones also, when it comes down to the content being spent for a household, they're the ones that are really driving it. 90% of households' entertainment budgets are driven by kids, and they are spending more, far more, when you have a family of multiple people and under one roof, and a consumer that's taking in video content. Kids are taking it more than we are as adults. So, they're driving the bus on this one.
So we're just under 10 minutes. Do I have any questions from the audience, from the panel? Sure.
So if Curtnutson was getting the shift and wants to for subscription, you see YouTube for the first time now, so you see private channels and sort of building a lot of their ad-only people to run these subscription levels and such. And we're definitely with CBS All Access that subscription, HBO Go, but now I guess it's all around $50 a month that subscription. So I do feel like we're getting this proliferation of subscription-driven models, and
want to?
I can,
Go for it.
I mean, I can take a stab at that. I actually think that the subscription phenomenon, if you will, is driven by, again, the consumer's desire to consume when, where, how, what. I don't know that it's necessarily saying the ad model is broken, because I think the ad, like if you, again, the stats say that your ad spend in the US last year was the highest ever. Yes, a lot of the spend was digital versus linear, and not on cable TV. But that's okay. I think a hybrid model will come up tomorrow, a hybrid model of some sort, which is short form getting monetized online via ads, and then you're sending them somewhere else where there's a subscription ad combo model on a Hulu, and then you send them to behind the paywall. What is that journey going to be? And I think some of that is still evolving, and I think we're going to see that. So someone can exist in every one of those ecosystems, hopefully seamlessly. Does that answer some of your question?
No, I don't really buy it, really. Because consumers right now are getting access for free. So why would a consumer decide, what I really want to do is pay $3 a month for the same stuff I used to be getting?
Convenience. It's
And
value
windowing.
proposition.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
Why would that same consumer agree to pay $3?
Different content
You don't
and
have to sort through
windowing.
cat videos to watch the news.
And I think, and I know you're going to jump on this, but the value proposition, I don't go from the ad-supported to subscription. I go from the top down, which is transactional. So the value proposition, instead of me ordering 2 movies a month in my household for $6 each, I'm getting Netflix for $10 a month with 100 hours that can be viewed. So for me, what Netflix figured out way earlier than the rest of us is the value proposition of subscription and choice for a minimal amount will satisfy a very broad amount of people.
Yeah. And the different content finds its channel. I don't know how the subscription stuff that YouTube wants to do is going to work out, and I don't know how their transactional stuff works. But I know that there are things that you want to watch on YouTube, but once you get to any long-form content on YouTube, I'm usually going to shift over, because there's plenty of places I can watch bootleg stuff on YouTube, for instance. People will post entire episodes of Sherlock. And maybe it gets pulled down a month from now, and maybe not. But I can always find the stuff I want. But I often find it to be, and maybe this is because I have more money than time, but I often find it easier just to pay somebody who can give it to me in a legitimized way that is high quality and all that stuff. So, and I think a lot of people feel that way. It's just like, look, I'm going to pay somebody else to make this easier for me than try to find a bootleg solution all over the place. I don't know why the shift, but I know that between the two of us, I think that's getting there.
I think you got to look at underlying motivations too. I think that historically what we've seen out of the Silicon Valley is reinvent for the purpose of reinventing. I don't know that sometimes that disruption is thinking about or thoughtful of what models they're attacking. And I think sometimes they'll come at you with, this is for the good of all, we're doing this, yet when you really kind of peel it back, it's really not. It's a bit self-serving with a public service announcement on the front end. I've seen some of those. And that could drive it too. If you're trying to look at other disruptive TV models, be it over-the-top subscriptions or other ad-supported things that are more like traditional TV. I mean, if we didn't really talk about TV everywhere, but the network-authenticated TV apps really have come a long way. And I think if I was Google, I would be, yes, I want to just have stuff on Google Play, but if you missed the Slap or you missed Blacklist and you wanted to go see that on NBC.com and you look at the experience that you had 2 or 3 years ago versus a full commercial ad load where you can't skip ads, you got to do something, because that network now has the ability to monetize where we used to say it was a C3 metric. Guess what? That's not flying anymore.
Sure.
They're now asking for monetization across a longer window because they're able to track some of that, and I think it gets better. So I don't know if that kind of touches on some of that, Laura, but I think those are just a couple of my thoughts on that. So. Any other questions from the audience? Okay. Well, I'd like to ask the panelists just maybe, what's your tea leaves? Give me like a minute, quick, rapid round on what's your future? What do you think things would be happening if we're sitting in this beautiful panel next year or 5 years from now? What'll be the same and what'll be different?
I think people are going to continue to look for ways to get as much content as possible onto whatever screens they prefer to watch, and I think that giant screens are going to continue to be very important. I mean, even young people, at least young people I work with, they still want to watch their game with their roommates on a giant TV. So I think we may have written out TVs too early.
I think a similar theme will probably come from all of us, that the consumer is going to drive this innovation and the consumer is going to win in the end. You're going to get it how you want it, when you want it, and the rest of us that are in these models that have existed for a while and are trying to bend towards it but still control it isn't going to work. So a year from now, I don't know that it'll be solved, so to speak, but we will be sitting in a place where you're able to watch what you want to watch, not watch something that's force-fed to you, and ultimately it'll be a much better value proposition than what we have today.
I sit in this room and I wonder as a consumer when I can walk in to the room I'm discussing and watch what I want when I want to watch it. And I can't understand, except for the shackles of the existing infrastructure, why that doesn't exist, why we all haven't found that. And someone will break through, and that will be our place. But I'm sitting here dreaming that that has to be the answer, and that you have to find that delivery mechanism. I also sit in this room as a content producer, and I say, God, it is just so damn hard to get seen. It's so damn hard to break in if I don't already have the relationships that I have. I mean, I'm lucky I've been in the traditional media business for a long time, so I can go rap on doors. And even if what I was producing absolutely sucked, someone will give me a chance. But guess what? The consumer cycle for them to report back that what I created sucked, and what I created really works, is super fast. I wish, and I think as part of this fantastic thing in my head, that I think the future is real about, is that as a content producer, it'd be as easy for me to upload to this platform somehow in an open marketplace, and that it be cataloged or intelligently placed so that it reached you if you had the palette for it faster and easier, has to exist, and it will happen. And it will be as easy as uploading to like an eBay thing, where instead of like Spotify and a major recording artist today saying, I'm making jack off of all of this, so what's the point? I think that inevitably it'll be a more fair marketplace, and the shackles will come off of the you-know-whos of the world that run media today and run distribution of media today. And whatever that mechanism is, and whoever's smart enough for us all to fall in love with it and grow to it, I'm absolutely 100% convinced it will exist.
Wow. So if I can just second all of what they all said, I think that would about cover it. I mean, I do want to say one thing that I have now said a few times, I think, and feels more and more real as I hear a lot of this, and that is, I think in about 5 years, we will be talking about reaggregation of a variety of things. And I think we will talk about consumer choice. We will talk about how consumer choice has become easier. And I hope that about sums it up.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Really do appreciate the panelists sharing these views with us, and thanks for hanging with us for this hour.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure.